Film and digital, the best of both worlds. Well, we've come out on this freezing cold winter's morning and we're up on Kerbar Edge in the Peak District, and it's absolutely beautiful. Now the sun is making its way up. It's probably about quarter an hour from sunrise. It's got some lovely frost on these rocks in the foreground here, and I've set myself up with the Panasonic G9. I'm shooting digital because it's very, very difficult when it's so dark to get the exposure and know what your composition's like with film. Digital is better in these conditions, as I've said before, but I do have the film camera with me, as I've said. After sunrise, I'm maybe looking to shoot some black and white. Now I have the camera in a vertical format. I'm bringing in this large foreground rock, and I've got a 2-stop hard graduated filter just to take down the sky because it is quite bright even though it's still pre-dawn. And I've got my widest lens on and I'm running it about 19 to 20 millimeters, so yeah, fairly wide for me, but that does give me the sweep of the foreground, which I really need. My normal wide angle lens of 28 millimeters, it just isn't big enough. Well, I've moved over to a slightly higher set of rocks now, and there's a beautiful formation in these rocks. Now the light is coming in from the left, the sun is rising over there and it's catching these rocks, and they're absolutely stunning. Still got the grad on, still got the wide angle, toning down that sky with a bit of a hill in the distance. Fantastic. Now I've got the colour shots in the bag, but I'm fairly certain this is also going to work well in black and white because the light is up a bit now, it's sharper, there's a bit more definition, and I'm filling in some of these shadow areas. So I've got the Nikon FE and I've got it loaded with XP2, which is a chromogenic film. Now the reason is I think it's going to be bright today, very, very hazy, bright, dazzling light. Now XP2 has got very, very good highlight control. It's a 400 speed film, so I can shoot it handheld if I need to be quick. But here I'm going for a 28mm lens, which is my widest today. I am going to retain the graduated filter. That is going to play down the sky, give me a lot more definition in those clouds. So let's see how this turns out. On the Nikon FE I can use a cable release, but if I want to do the mirror lockup I actually use the self-timer, and I only have to crank it over slightly, it's mechanical, and when I press the shutter now the mirror will flip up, count down a few seconds, and once the timer expires it will take the shot, so we'll get no mirror slap, and it's a very, very well damped shutter on the FE, superb camera. So this one's at a 30th of a second. Simple. Now the plan for today is to obviously shoot the sunrise, which we've done, and hopefully get a sunset later if the cloud doesn't come in too much, but you just never know really. It is forecast to cloud over slightly. Now during the day it's going to be very harsh light, and that's the reason I brought my film camera with me as well. The digital is ideal for the early morning shooting and the sunsets because the light's changing so rapidly. It's very hard with film. I'd have probably burned through a roll this morning just trying to get one exposure which was absolutely spot on and gave me the feeling of the day. But during the actual day itself, or I got lots more light as I have now, I think film's ideal, and black and white particularly, which is why I brought the little Nikon FE with just 3 lenses, the 28, the 50 and a 70 to 150 zoom. Very lightweight, fits in the bag alongside the Panasonic G9 and allows me to sort of vary my shooting. Now, I probably won't shoot colour most of the day now because it's getting a bit washed out. I don't like these harsh light conditions with digital at all. So probably pack up in the next half hour, pick up Robin and Dave, and we'll head off somewhere else. Now, with the light levels intensifying all the time, I'm getting some lovely highlight detail on these rocks, but I'm also getting quite a lot of deep shadows. Now, I'm pointing, I wouldn't say towards the sun, but the sun is definitely coming in fairly close to the axis of the lens, so I'm having to exclude the sky. The sky is just white out now, completely gone. And I've got 3 rocks in a nice arrangement in a vertical composition. I've got a millstone, or a partly cut millstone, big slab of rock, and then a bit of a pinnacle, a bit of a sticking out. I don't know what it is really, but anyway, those 3 are lined up, and I've managed to just about include everything with the 50mm lens at f/16. Biased it towards the foreground. There may be slight softness on the far rock. I don't know yet, but that's of tertiary importance to me. It's these first foreground rocks that matter the most. Now, the reason I opted for the 50mm, which is just a standard focal length, is the wide angle did accentuate the foreground and give it more prominence. It loomed large, that millstone, and that's a nice look, but it is a bit cliched. And also I wanted to bring the distant rock into more prominence, because with the wide angle it would push that right back. It'd be a lot smaller in the frame. Now, the standard lens gives a very normal perspective, typical to what your eye would see. Not as wide, but the actual perspective, sorry, the size of the objects within the image is pretty much what you would see normally. Now, I do like that. Shooting with medium and large format a lot, it is my favourite lens, and I'm also finding it typically now with 35mm. It is my sort of go-to lens. Now, I was pretty convinced when we came out after lunch that I'd be shooting black and white, but the light has dipped considerably, and it's made it very, very muted and very soft and subtle. Now, that is favouring the colour image again, especially in these woods on this edge where we have mosses, lichens and all sorts of growth on the boulders, and also the silver birch themselves complementing those colours perfectly. So I set up with the digital camera, the G9, and I'm shooting at sort of a modest standard focal length on my 14 to 140 zoom, and keeping the sky out of the shot, very important. I don't want the sky encroaching because your eye follows the brightness. And yeah, it looks very nice. I may shoot some black and white in a minute though, because there is some nice cloud bubbling up, but for now it's colour. Well, our patience has been rewarded, because We have yomped for about 45 minutes through some very boggy, marshy land, and I'll just show you what I'm shooting. Now these are 3 rocks named after Nelson's ships. Victory is the nearest one. I don't know the other 2 just at the moment. I'll go and get a close-up of them in a second. And I'm shooting them again, surprise, surprise, with the 50mm lens. This time, however, I've got the yellow filter on. Now the yellow filter is to darken that sky somewhat because it's a blue sky, and also to lift these foreground grasses which are yellowish. So it'll give me a lovely contrast boost there and actually lift the image over a standard shot. Now I'm using XP2 Super again, and it's a very, very bright scene, so I'm shooting at 1/25th and 2/50th of a second, 2 frames in case I have a problem with one of them. Now it's not been an especially long day's shoot today. I mean, this is winter now, and we had probably about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours this morning in super light conditions, and we've had a couple of hours later in the afternoon stroke evening now. But if I was to look at how the cameras have functioned, I would say that I think I've got a good balance here in this little system. The weight isn't too much to carry. We've been yomping around through boggy areas for quite a while. It's been quite tough going at times. I didn't bring too much 35mm film gear. I kept it quite simple, a 28-50 and a small zoom. Would have liked to carry more primes, but you know, space and weight is a consideration. And having the Panasonic G9 earlier in the day with two zooms, a wide angle zoom and an all-purpose zoom, was excellent for the colour work. And if it does brighten up, it may well brighten up, I don't know, then I'll go back to colour work and shoot some of the late evening light catching the clouds. But it's been a pretty good combination, I think. XP2, good while it was very bright. I think in these conditions now I'd rather have HP5 Plus or FP4, little bit more texture in there rather than the super smooth chromogenics. But yeah, I've enjoyed it. It's been a really interesting little experiment, and hopefully with about an hour to go before sunset I'll get a few more images.